All right, so taking the medication misoprostol for early pregnancy loss. If you saw my video on the miscarriage that I had, you know that I took misoprostol to expel, all of the tissue and whatnot from my pregnancy. So I have an in-depth knowledge of what it's like to take misoprostol. And I get lots of questions about it. One of the big things is women, they don't know what to expect in regards to the bleeding and the sensation from it. And obviously every woman is different, but I thought that, yeah, this video could be helpful for helping women, of course, in conjunction with the support of their care provider, if misoprostol is the right choice for them. So first and foremost, it's important to know that you have options. If your body is not expelling, the matter from the pregnancy on its own, you can choose to have a D&C where a care provider goes in and essentially, sucks out the embryonic sac, whatever has developed, they pull that out during a short procedure. You can just wait for your body to do it on its own, or you can choose to take the misoprostol. And again, this is certainly a decision to make with your care provider, who can give you, in-depth knowledge about each option. One thing to know is that misoprostol does not always work. Sometimes it doesn't really cause any bleeding or cramping. Sometimes it causes a lot, but it doesn't actually cause the tissue, from the pregnancy to expel. In this case, if you don't start bleeding within 48 hours of taking it, most care providers will have you try a second dose. If that doesn't work, then, you look at your other options. It's typically administered vaginally, so they'll prescribe you, they usually look like small white pills and you wash your hands first, obviously, and you insert them as far up the vagina as you can. And it can be an all-day process, causing everything to expel from the misoprostol. So usually it's recommended that you insert it in the morning to allow for plenty of time, so you're not, passing the pregnancy at night when you're trying to sleep. It's also important to make sure you do it during a day where you have no obligations. I chose to do it on a Saturday so I could also have a Sunday to just kind of rest and recuperate physically and emotionally. You want to make sure you have a comfortable, private space to experience this in. If you have children, it's ideal if you can find somebody to watch them on the day that you're going to take misoprostol, and to ask for privacy, because it can be a really intense experience emotionally and physically. You want to make sure that you're wearing a pad, because again, this can cause pretty heavy bleeding, heavier than your menstrual cycle, the bleeding you experience then. I put down like a big absorbent pad on my couch. I made sure I was wearing these like loose pajama pants that I think they were red, like ones that I could wash easily, but I also didn't mind if they got blood on them. And that even with the pad on, when it finally started working, the entire crotch of my pajama pants were soaked in blood. And so I'm glad I had the pad underneath me as well, so the blood didn't get on the couch. So just know that if it works, there will likely be quite a bit of blood. With that said, if you soak through 2 consecutive pads, 2 pads per hour for 2 consecutive hours. So essentially over 2 hours, if you completely soak through 4 pads, you want to let your care provider know, because there is such a thing as too much bleeding with this, but quite a bit of bleeding is normal. So make sure you are prepared for that. What did I do? I think during this time I watched Friends, just to distract myself. And I have had a vaginal unmedicated birth before, and the contractions that the misoprostol caused, and then that is what it does. It essentially causes contractions that causes, everything in the uterus to expel. And It was not as bad as the strongest contractions that I had during childbirth, but it was close. It was a lot more intense than I expected. I had to use a lot of the tools that a lot of the pain relieving tools I had to utilize during childbirth with the breathing. You know, if you're considering taking misoprostol, I have a video on this channel about breathing techniques for birth. The birth breathing technique, or just like the calm breathing, essentially just like making sure you're consistently taking really long, deep breaths in through the nose, out through the nose if you can. If you're congested, you can pretend like you're sucking in through a straw. So, and then exhaling the same way. So doing deep, deep, deep breaths can help you move through the pain of the contractions. Again, the distraction, you can take over-the-counter pain medications. You certainly don't want to take these in addition to prescription pain medications. Most doctors will not prescribe prescription pain medications when you're taking misoprostol, but you can usually take Advil or Tylenol to numb a bit of the discomfort. And again, every woman is different. You might not experience as much pain as I did, but just for me personally, it was an incredibly painful experience. And, you know, emotionally, I felt pretty numb during most of it, but when I noticed all the blood on my crotch and I went to the bathroom and there's quite a bit of blood that came out, and that's when the tissue came out. So I saw the embryonic sac. That was really emotional. And it's weird. I wasn't looking back, it's like, well, of course, like, why wouldn't you expect to have those big emotions? But I was unprepared for the emotions that came up. Actually seeing what was supposed to have developed into a baby coming out of me was really emotional. So be prepared for those really big emotions. And it is so normal, of course, to grieve. And for me, even though that day it was really emotional, I cried a lot, I was in a lot of pain, it was also healing in a way because it helped me move forward. Because I had found out like 3 weeks prior is when I had the first ultrasound that didn't show a heartbeat. And I had to get 3 more ultrasounds after that, each one confirming that yes, there was no heartbeat. And so it was just a really, really long, drawn out process. My body was not expelling anything on its own. And so it was really, and I continued to have pregnancy symptoms, even though the pregnancy wasn't developing. So taking the misoprostol and having everything leave my body was emotional, but it also allowed me to then, okay, move forward and to fully grieve, to begin the healing process. So there can be light on the other side of taking the misoprostol. And yeah, in regards to the tissue coming out, pay attention to if you notice something like that, because if you don't, then your care provider might want to check with an ultrasound to make sure that everything was expelled. They might want to do that anyways, even if you did see that tissue. And it's really important, you know, if your doctor wants to have a follow-up visit, which most do, you want to make sure to schedule that and show up for that appointment, because that's a really important part of your care. If there's a question that you have about misoprostol that I didn't answer, or if you've taken it and there's something that you want to mention to other women that might be considering taking it for their miscarriage, go ahead and let us know in the comments below.